welcome to the show. I am so excited to welcome Jeff Snyder, autism, neurodiversity, self-advocate, and public speaker. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Palafox. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on the show. I know that you and I in the past have spoken about lots of different areas in which you advocate for. And one of those areas is really the top stressors in education. And you were willing to come on to the show and talk about that. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Jeff. Actually, before we even do that, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, my name is Jeff Snyder. I am an autism and neurodiversity self-advocate and public speaker. I am based in Seekonk, Massachusetts, near Providence, Rhode Island. I was first diagnosed with autism at 21 months old, and I was nonverbal until I was 4 years old. And then upon my graduation from Seekonk Public Schools in 2007, I became the first student diagnosed with autism to have completed pre-K through grade 12 within the Seekonk public school system and not come from other towns or school districts. I have also been living in my own apartment since 2015. I've been living on my own for 6 years, and then recently in May of 2021, I founded the website Going the Distance, which highlights my journey as someone on the autism spectrum and also as a neurodiverse individual. Some of my other hobbies include, of course, Disney, fan fiction writing. And for those of you who don't know, fan fiction are stories based on movies, TV shows, cartoons, any form of media. And then also, I am a frequent traveler. I travel the country, giving speaking engagements about my journey as someone on the autism spectrum. And my areas include special education, employment, and DEI, which is, for those who don't know, stands for diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Awesome, Jeff. That's so fantastic. Um, yeah, I wonder if we can dive into the stressors, specifically in regards to education, because I think that, there's a good portion of our audience who's affected by education. Whether they're a parent or a teacher or a professional or someone on the spectrum themselves. And sharing things from your experience, I think, can be a very powerful tool as, to empower voices it's really critical to do. So I'll let you start where you'd like to start in regards to identifying your top stressors.
Well, I think the first issue that I'd like to cover in terms of stressors in education is in the regard of school safety drills. I mean, I know a lot of schools will probably call me out and say, why are you talking about school safety drills? It's important. What if there's a real situation and you're trying to get people out of it? Well, I'm going to put in a disclaimer here. I am not trying to get anyone out of school safety drills. I mean, yes, they're important, but the drills themselves can be extremely stressful to neurodivergent and special needs students that also have major sensory issues. And when I was younger, I despised fire drills. I would and I still do, to be honest with you. And I would get taken out of the building before they would pull the alarm. I mean, that was something that was put in my IEP. And I think a lot of schools will kind of ignore the child's or the student's fear of the school safety drills, because I think the important thing is that the neurodiverse special education student will want to get notified of the drills in advance, because a lot of schools think that springing the drill on the students will help them mentally prepare for when the time comes. However, when it comes to a drill, then the student would like to know ahead of time. So I think teachers and parents need to come together and say these school safety drills, whether it's fire drills or lockdown drills or bus evacuation drills, or even if you live in the Midwest, like tornado drills, or and on the West Coast of like California and stuff, earthquake drills. So any kind of drills can be very stressful for neurodiverse students. And it's really important that there's a common ground between parents, teachers, and school administrators, that school safety drills are bothersome, and we can try to take some of the edge off without getting the student completely out of the drill in general.
Yeah, Jeff, I mean, you brought up a few things, which is the drills are stressful in many ways. One is that there's a sensory piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yep.
those alarms, bells, the unpredictability in the schedule, the lining up, all of these things, um, that can be challenging on someone's sensory system, which it might be hypersensitive to some of those factors, um, and fear and being scared.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always, fear of the unknown. I mean, when is it going to happen? When is it going to, is it going to affect how is it going to affect me? All these things come, is this real? It's like that. It's like Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. Is this real life? Is this just fantasy? That's the emotion that is probably going through a neurodiverse
Mm,
student's mind. So, but I think the important thing is, again, to make, the schools aware that these drills are bothersome, and some of them will just say, you know what, screw your child's feelings. They're going to have to put up with it the same as everybody else, and that to me is not only a sign of disrespect for the student, but the student's family, particularly the parents or guardians. And that really sends a bad message to the student, um, him or herself, because the student wants to have the edge taken. They would probably want to get out of the drill entirely, but obviously they can't get out of it entirely because they have to prepare along with the rest of the student population. But
mhm.
I think more awareness to the fact that students deserve, special needs students that are neurodiverse or hypersensitive should have advance notice, regardless of what what kind of drill it is. And whether it's a fire drill or any kind, or a lockdown drill, or any kind of drill, it's more important, maybe 2 or 3 days beforehand, just have the student or students meet with the people who are going to be coordinating the drill, and they'll just be explained to that this is a drill, nobody's going to get hurt, and if you really don't want to, and if it helps, maybe you could be a part of the drill, maybe
Mhm.
just doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, this kind of goes back to the idea of collaborative problem solving, right, Jeff? The idea
Mhm.
that, hey, we're going to notify you because we have this awareness. We're going to notify you ahead of time. And we're going to work together with you, not to say you're not going to be part of the drill, because we want you to practice it just in case something were to happen. But how do we do that in a way that minimizes the distress, um, and the discomfort of the drill? And so I love some of
Yeah.
these ideas, be part of the drill, maybe even if you're younger, write a social story and review that, or review the steps that are going to happen in the drill before it even happens. So that awareness, though, I think you're right, is key.
Yes, and actually that could, as a fan fiction writer, maybe I could write a story where a certain character, experiences a drill, and they kind of have that, and that could evolve into like some kind of social story that the student can share with the school, with the teacher or with the administrator or whatnot. So
Yeah. Awesome. Great, Jeff. Okay, so school safety drills is one of the top stressors. What's another stressor that you experienced?
well, there was another stressor that I dealt with was school assemblies. And school assemblies for me, that was kind of where I had to put I would always wear a mask to hide my emotions from the school assembly, because some of these assemblies are really important. Some had like, some of them did not have educational value. And just the noise of being among the student population was really draining on me. And then of course there's screaming for silence from the principal or teacher or whatnot, and that was really bothersome to me. And I mean, and I believe that as someone who has experienced school, particularly with homecoming, particularly at the high school level, there's homecoming, there's also Spirit Week. Like I know, in junior high and high school, there would always be Spirit Weeks before Thanksgiving, and that and those were those were bothersome. And I would always leave the assembly or field trip with like a really massive headache, like a migraine, like over my eyes. And sometimes I would carry that headache with me for the rest of the school day. I mean, and then some assemblies were even held in the afternoon. And I think the stress and anxiety of anticipating that assembly could also be a factor. So it's just a matter of, there's also, and I believe there is a way that schools can take the students' mental health into account. Maybe take them to an alternate location, where they could either watch the assembly on like closed circuit television, or maybe take them to the library where they can work on something else. I mean, and I get the fact that we attend school assemblies because we're a part of that school community, and just because the event is for the community doesn't mean it has to be for everybody. And I believe students, you know, neurodiverse students who have sensory issues that don't like school assemblies should have the option to not have to attend that particular assembly. And that may be hard for some schools to understand. I mean, for me personally, if I were to do a public speaking engagement in front of a student body, I mean, I would prefer to do it virtually. I mean, because I think the stress of being in front of so many students doing it in person could just be too overwhelming for me. And this is why I offer both in person and virtual speaking options for schools, for organizations. But if it was going to be for a student body of students, I would prefer to do it virtually, because I can also get very easily distracted by a certain noise. And I think you have in school assemblies there are a lot of distractions. And I think I think to minimize the distraction that could ultimately lead to a sensory overload or meltdown, an alternate setting, I believe, would probably be the best option. and of course, some schools will argue like, oh, this assembly is important. It's meant to be fun. Well, it's not going to be fun if the student has either a mental health breakdown or a mental health or a sensory overload, and it will not be fun for the student if he or she has that. So I believe students that have sensory issues do have the option to back out of an assembly and just have an alternative setting. And yeah.
And Jeff, when you were in school, how did your sensory sensitivities get identified or highlighted for your team, for your IEP team?
Well, I
Shoot.
go to an alternate setting for Spirit Week. Go to the main office or go into the library or something. That I do remember, but I was not given the option throughout the rest of my schooling, throughout my education. So, but I believe that parents and teachers in a child's IEP meeting should say, he or she does not like school assemblies. Could we put it in our child's IEP to put the child in an alternate setting until even if the assembly is an important one. Like if you're like, I know there was a lot of like large scale gatherings when I was my senior year of high school, particularly because with the graduating class and all that. And I think, this, of course, the student needs to know what to do when it comes to, walking across the stage and stuff, but, maybe have, you know, maybe do like a private, graduation rehearsal or something like that. And then once the day comes, the student can march with his or her class. So, I mean, all these preparations, can really make a big difference, particularly, with a student's mental health and well-being. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hey Jeff, I lost power briefly. Did you notice? Hold on one second. I'm going to turn on my light. I lost power, and I lost a portion of what you were saying. Hold on one second. What I'll do is I'll edit this part out. So of course, Jeff, this is just rolling with the punches today, huh?
mhm.
So here's what I lost. Which is when I asked you how your team identified your sensory kind of system or preferences. That's the answer that I lost. Would you mind? I'm going to set you back up. If you could answer that one question and then we'll stop and then I'll go back to another question. Is that okay with you?
Oh, that's fine. So, um, so I when it comes to school assemblies, I know that I was given one option. The only time I was ever given an option was during my freshman year of high school, particularly during Spirit Week, which was I was given the option to either go to the office or go to the library and just kind of sit out the event. And I think that and and of course, I never got that kind of accommodation again after throughout the rest of my schooling. But to go back to what I was talking about was that you know I mean some schools will argue that the assemblies are very important for the student and the student would have to be with the student body. Well, I believe that schools should give the student the option to sit out of the assembly and just work on something else, because if you're putting a student if you're forcing a student to do something, then you're doing the student more harm than good by forcing them to go into this particular assembly. So it's really about, if the student doesn't want to be at the assembly but needs to be there, then maybe have the assembly be recorded on like television, and the student can watch it from the classroom or whatnot. So I believe, the more students, I think the more that schools are, I think the more awareness is spread, I think the better that schools can better off, taking note of of that student's particular sensory issues.
Yeah. And something that you said earlier was, is there educational value to the attendance of this assembly? And if there is so much distress and discomfort, there probably isn't a lot of value if it's causing more harm than good in that
Yes.
moment,
Yeah.
And so being able to make that accommodation of addressing the sensory issues so that we could potentially even gain something from the assembly. But if not, and it's decided that there's not a lot of value maybe to that assembly, to give the student an option to engage in something else during that time. So I love
Yes.
that. It's very intentional, and it's very student focused and student centered. And so that's fantastic. Okay, so Jeff, we hit school safety drills, we hit school
Mhm.
assemblies. Do you have another one, another stressor?
I would definitely say probably substitute teachers,
Mm.
because you've got to, for one thing, that's another area that I struggle with, was substitute teachers. And the class would often, most classes would take advantage of a substitute teacher because, they can do whatever they want and stuff. And the teachers, try to go Arlie Ermy on them, trying to, give order and stuff like that. But, and that was a big one. And because, first of all, the teacher that, is not there for some particular reason. And you get this teacher that you don't even know, you don't even understand, you know if he or she will understand your needs, and 99% of the time they don't. And so that was very bothersome to me. And of course, I respected the substitute teacher as much as anyone, but not everyone in the class that I was in would do that. And I mean, and I think if the student has like a particular aid, then the student can be out of that class for the day, for that class day, and take whatever work that the regular teacher left the student and just take them to an alternate location. I mean, that would be if the student has like an aid or something, they can go to a specific area like a library or another classroom and just, do whatever is done, is that the regular teacher wants the substitute teacher to have the class do. So
Hmm. Yeah, to have a plan when there's that change. Hey Jeff, when you had a sub teacher or a substitute teacher, what did you do to really kind of make it work when the sub was there?
it's just like, it's like you said, Dr. Palafox, it was um, rolling with the punches. I mean, that was a that's kind of what I did. And dealing with substitute teachers is like dealing with school assemblies. I mean, I would put a mask on to show my emotions, and sometimes the regular classroom teacher would say that he or she is going to be out a particular day, and there's going to be a substitute teacher, and that would kind of help me a little bit. But what if something unexpected happens? How will I get that notice? How will I get that advance? How would I know without walking into a specific situation? So, I mean, if maybe the teacher could talk to the student privately, and say that he or she is going to be out for this X amount of days. And it's more about getting and maybe that getting that advance notice will kind of help the student mentally and allow them to kind of, prepare their minds for what's to come. So that could be one example. And of course, some of the substitute teachers that I've had went on to become regular classroom teachers. So, that at that time they probably don't know all the ropes. They don't know what it's like to be in a regular classroom. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think the more that students and I think if students get that message that their teacher's not going to be in, that could help them kind of prepare their day for what's to come. And what if there's what if all the classroom teachers are out, and maybe just have the student get all the work from any substitute teacher that is covering that particular class, and then in that designated amount of time, just go to the regular classroom and work with the aide on the assignments. So,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Great. Hey, Jeff, you have used this term, and I'd love a description of it, or if you could help the audience understand what this is. And you have said, I'd have to put that mask on. Could you help the audience
mhm.
understand what masking is?
Well, masking is hiding your emotions. You're basically forcing yourself to hide your true feelings over a false, feeling that you want to put yourself in. And it's very, very unhealthy for a neurodiverse or a sensory friendly person to put a mask on and say, hi, how you doing? It's like it's like really bad acting. And you're acting badly, but you're really trying your hardest to not goof up in front of this person that you like or love or whatnot. And even around people that you really don't get along with, you try to put a mask on and just try to be nice to them. And this is especially true with social situations and like families that you really don't get along with, whether it's parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even medical professionals that you really don't like. I mean, you put a mask on and you're hiding your emotions, but at the same time, if you mask, you're really doing more harm than good, and on the level that you're coming across as trying to be someone that you're not. And if you're trying to be someone that you're not, you're hurting your self-esteem, you're hurting your character,
Mm-hmm.
you're hurting your personality as an individual. So, I mean, that's what masking really is. And masking can lead to sensory overloads, and they can lead to meltdowns. And I've masked sometimes, and there are times where I just break down. So it's a very, it's a very, very common problem for individuals. And this is part of the reason why I became a self advocate and public speaker, because people, you know, people don't have to mask all the time. Maybe sometimes they do, but not all the time. And that's something that kind of resonates with me, that there are times where you will need to mask, like if you're in a job interview, or if you're at or if you're at an important family function like a wedding or a funeral. You really have to hide your mask. And especially when it comes to a funeral, it's even more difficult because you just lost this loved one, and you're around people that you don't really get along with, or you don't really communicate well. and they're trying to get you into this conversation that you really don't want to be a part in. So you try to mask and be a part of that conversation, and that's a major that's an issue for a lot of neurodiverse individuals. Is that when you mask, you're doing a lot more. You're really hurting yourself mentally, and you're lowering your confidence because you're pretending to be someone that you're not. And it's very, very frustrating. It can be masking can be hurtful. It can be hurtful. It can be harmful. It could be a whole bunch of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Jeff. Masking has come up quite a bit on this show. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that we continue to increase its awareness so that we understand. And this is why, it's in school when we kind of going back to the top stressors in education, going back there, it's like there is a lot of masking happening in the educational setting that is taking up bandwidth, that is taking up your effort, that is taking up your energy, that can't then be used for learning or can't be used for other things. And so it's an important piece that we need to address so that we can really
Mm-hmm.
make that educational environment as valuable as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, if someone is listening to this episode and they want to get a hold of you, what is the best way for them to either find out more about you or get a hold of you?
Well, I am on the following social media sites. I am on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn. I am also on Twitter and Instagram. And my username on both Instagram and Twitter is GoDistance3562. And I am also, and of course, you can also find me on my website, which is Jeff Snyder which is Jeff Snyder Autism Neurodiversity Self Advocate at .wordpress.com, and it's called Going the Distance. And I update blogs every Monday through Friday, and then I also offer, and the website also offers all my speaking services, all the presentations that I give. I also do my blogs. I update my events, and then I am also on Speaker Hub. If you want to reach out to me on Speaker Hub, I've already had several organizations reach out to me via Speaker Hub, and it's been proven very successful. So if you're from an organization or a company that's trying to promote diversity, equality, and inclusion, you can reach out to me, and we could work something out for your organization or business.
Awesome, Jeff. And as someone that reads your blogs, they are so valuable. I mean, leading up to Halloween, you had tips for how to manage Halloween. You just posted a blog on, having your flight be canceled and what do you do and how you personally handled it. So they've been really really valuable to read. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming onto the show today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.